I dumped my fiancée after she demanded an open relationship before marriage. I've rewritten this several times to try to shorten it, but our story goes back to childhood. I'd like some advice on what to do when I get home in 2 days. I'm changing all the names and I'm sorry this letter is so long. Jan and I have been friends since childhood, and our parents have been lifelong friends as well. We grew up together and started dating in our teens. As our families had predicted, they had more plans for us than we could imagine. When I went to do my master's degree, I had to move to another city, while Jen stayed in our hometown to do her nursing degree. A year later, we decided to stay friends and not let the stress of our relationship control us. We both stayed best friends and dated other people. It was strange because we both knew it was only temporary and that we would eventually be back together at some point. After I graduated, I stayed in the city where I completed my master's degree and started working in my field of expertise. I was waiting for the opportunity to move back home, and when I got it, I was over the moon. Jen had a long-term partner who was a nice guy, but I always felt that he was getting bored with our friendship. I understood the vibe and withdrew out of respect. Although we spoke a few times a year, my boss and mentor, Paul 44M, was a good man and we became good friends. He taught me the ropes, and one day he suddenly came out of the ivory tower and wanted to have a chat. He told me about a vacant position in a foreign city that would be advertised soon. He explained the position to me. Although the salary was not high, it would basically cover all expenses including rent, hotels, and travel expenses. I would be based in Tokyo and occasionally have to travel to other Asian cities for a few days. I thought about it and talked to my friends and parents. Paul said it was a job, but also a great opportunity to prove myself and climb the career ladder. I thought, why not? I could save most of my salary and gain valuable experience. Paul said he could talk to the boss and recommend me if I wanted. He explained that he had done something similar a few years ago and it had helped his career. So I went for it. The first year was terrible. Not only did I have to adapt to the culture and social rules of Japan, but I also had to travel to other countries for work. To my surprise, wherever I went, there were lots of women willing to go out with me. They all liked foreigners. I got to taste the delicious food of the Orient. They weren't women from third world countries either. Most of them were highly educated. I had lots of affairs, but I made it clear to them that I wasn't interested in long-term relationships or marriage, because I was only there temporarily. In the end, I stayed for 2 years. Paul came for a few holidays a year or to supervise some work. I admit we had a hard time in some cities, such as Angeles in the Philippines. After the contract expired, I returned home and bought a house outside the city, paying the down payment. After living in a city of 37 million people, I needed some space. I stayed at home for a month, and when I visited my parents, Jen was there too. She and the other guy had broken up a year ago, and we started talking more seriously. Although we had kept in touch for years, we started dating again. I delayed having sex as long as possible, because I was really afraid of what might happen. While I was in Asia, I had become addicted to having various partners and tried to control this desire before Jen and I got serious. I mean, everyone including Jen knows that I've dated, but there are occasional photos of me with different women on social media. My mother called me a wham a few times, and to be honest, that sting is now beginning to dissolve. When I slept with Jen, to use a better term, she was very surprised. She said I had changed and that it had never happened before. She meant that I had gained a lot of experience. She asked me some questions, and I admitted that I had indeed told the truth. I didn't tell her the exact number because even if you divide it by 3, the number is still frightening. I have no doubt that I am and can be faithful to her. The seed I inadvertently planted in her mind that night would later cause serious problems. Of course, our families were delighted that we were together, as they should be. We got on well, and after talking to her parents, I proposed that she move in, and everything went smoothly. There were some signs that I considered to be dangerous, such as asking me if I was happy with her. Fast forward to 2019, and the wedding is planned for June 2020. We all know what happened in 2020, don't we? Christmas was great, and as we approach the new year, we will be welcoming our first D-Day. I was sitting at the computer doing some work when Jen and her cousin Tammy 32F were looking through some wedding stuff. I have known Tammy since we were kids and we get along well. Jen asked if we could talk and Tammy walked into the living room and sat on the couch. She went to the table to talk to Jen. She first asked me not to interrupt or panic, and she wanted to talk about our differences in the bedroom. She said she believed that I would not be satisfied with her, and that I would eventually cheat on her. She didn't want our future children and relationship to be ruined. If I cheated on her, then I would be thinking, great, I'm about to get dumped. And just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, I heard the voice of the infomercial man, but wait, there's more. Jen asked if I would be willing to have an open relationship so she could gain more experience and so she wouldn't feel so insecure. She said I shouldn't worry because I was the only man she had ever loved, and that's why none of her relationships had made it to marriage. I agreed with her because I felt the same way at the time. Of course, I thought it was a joke. She wasn't taking it seriously at all. It really couldn't have happened because it was a year and a half ago. I'll try to recall the main points she said. She said she would only be with random men, never someone we knew or worked with, and would never have a relationship twice with the same person, nor would there be an emotional connection. When I realized she wasn't joking, I was like, WTF, I couldn't breathe. I didn't think my heart would skip a beat. It jumped to the center of my throat. I'm not a violent or angry person, but I yelled. I started to understand why Tammy insisted on staying nearby. I yelled, Tammy, did you tell her to do this? Tammy said she was there to support Jen. Wow, thanks a lot. Then Jen said that under the same rules, I was free to do what I wanted. I said no, I was very angry about this, and even now as I write this, I'm still angry. Then I said I didn't want a one-night stand, I just wanted to be with one person. She said, who am I looking at? I looked at Tammy, nodded and said I wanted to have sex with Tammy. Jen was furious about this. Tammy didn't expect this and her face turned a little red. She is very uncomfortable now. Jen said no, she is family, someone we both know. It's disgusting that I would suggest this. I'm completely crazy now. Where did this come from? We argued back and forth for a while, and I told her that if she did this, our relationship would be over. I was completely against it. I loved her and we could solve all problems together, but not this one. I stormed into the bedroom, grabbed the pillows and went to the guest room. I heard them talking downstairs for a while, but couldn't hear what they were saying. It would have been a funny joke if they hadn't continued talking for an hour. I didn't sleep all night and went to work the next day a complete wreck. That day Jen started her 2-week night shift, so at least for a while we wouldn't be coming home together and could calm down and talk later. Every day there was a dinner in the fridge for me, along with a note saying I love you. She texted a lot, but I kept my replies short. Looking through some files, I found an email notification on her account for a booking at a nice hotel close to my office. I often go there with colleagues, so I'm familiar with it. I think she's at work, but maybe she wants to apologize and invite me out the next night. I keep waiting for her text or phone call, but she just asks how my day was, and then she says she's glad because she only has to work one more night shift. How does she still have time to book a hotel room? I'm sick and stressed at the office, and start browsing some dating sites, especially unselected profiles. I found nothing. Paul suddenly appeared and asked if I wanted to go to lunch together. Seeing me in a mess, he asked me what was wrong. I told him that everything was difficult, but that he had always supported my relationship with Jen. He suggested that we go to the hotel restaurant for lunch. Restaurant? I yelled, no, not going to that place. He didn't know that we actually went to lunch. My stomach was upset, I couldn't eat, and I didn't even want to drink water. He said that I couldn't work like this and that I could take as much paid or unpaid leave as I needed. I told him I couldn't stay at home anymore, that I couldn't see her anymore, and that part of me wanted to believe it wasn't true. I hurried home, crammed as much stuff as I could into the car, and then back to the office. Paul said, let's go to the hotel and wait for her. I mean, I'm not a detective, I'm more like Inspector Clouseau. I really resisted, but I really wanted to know, so we went to the lounge bar, and I started to drink heavily, still hoping it wasn't true. At about 6:30, Paul tapped me on the shoulder. She was at the front desk, not in uniform. I wanted to strangle her, scream, spit, cry. I don't know. We waited 10 minutes, she got in the elevator, and Paul and I walked to the front desk. I asked the receptionist to connect me to Jane Blank's room, and as soon as she answered the phone, it rang. I started shouting into the receiver and she sounded confused. Jen, I told you if you do this, we're done. I don't want to continue this relationship anymore. I hung up and now I'm not even looking at it anymore. I went back to Paul's house and now my phone was blinking. The only person I called was my dad, and I explained what happened using PG-rated words and that I needed to go away for a while. It wasn't a discussion, I was sorry for my attitude. The phone didn't stop ringing for 2 days, everyone was calling me and I wasn't answering. I didn't know what to do. The only way I could explain how I felt was like walking underwater. Paul mentioned some financial issues that I should deal with to protect myself. I hadn't even considered it. The wedding loan on the house, the car loan, we kept separate accounts, one for the wedding and one for the house. I didn't care. The next day, I sent an email to Jan saying that this would be our last contact and that I was leaving the city for a while. The wedding and everything else was canceled. I called my dad and spoke to him for a long time. Although he was very frustrated, he understood that I needed time and space. He said that he still hoped that we could work this out. 10 days later, I boarded a plane to Bali. I didn't reply to her or anyone's messages or emails. I don't know if she left the hotel that night or stayed. I don't care. I eventually landed in Bali and then the bottle, and the next month was offline except for my father and work, and I didn't even care if I got fired. I wish I could say I was happy, but the truth is I spent most of the time drunk. I was angry, ashamed and resentful about how things had turned out. I asked Paul for leave and 3 weeks later he asked if I could come back to Tokyo to deal with some things. We talked about the new global virus, and I mentioned that I had to go back to Canada to deal with things because I had heard rumors of a possible lockdown. I arrived in Tokyo on March 1st, and it felt good to be back at work, even if it was only shortly after hearing rumors of a lockdown. Paul mentioned my return to Canada, but I said that it might only be for 30 or 60 days, and I needed some time to plan my next move. 30 to 60 days, screw that, I'm going to stay in Japan for another year and then get vaccinated. But this time I really don't want to go home. My house has been rented out, I'm talking to my family, but refused to provide any information about Jen. On September 21st, I received news that my father had a heart attack and was in good condition, but needed triple bypass surgery. The operation is serious, not as serious as it was 40 years ago, but I still want to see him just in case. I know that things will get ridiculous when I get home, and I really don't want that. I just want to see my family and thank Paul for everything he's done for me, even if I was selfish before. But I know I have to see her. I don't know how I'll feel or what I'll think. I'm sorry for writing so much, but I have a lot left unsaid. Any advice, tips or insults are welcome. I will be taking off in 4 hours and will update in about 24 hours. One after landing I went to see my dad. He seems fine and is actually looking forward to the surgery. Mom is fine too, but obviously hiding her worries. I stayed with him almost the first 24 hours. I think we talked about everything but nothing really important. I didn't want to pressure him by telling him I came for him, but I used the trip to rearrange my life, close some doors and open some new ones. Already integrated into him. We talked back and forth for a while, talking about my father's work, and he asked me if I had had any contact with Jen. I said no, and he also told me that the boss wanted to see me, but considering my father, it could wait. I knew I was in deep and told myself that it might as well be once and for all. I made a list of tasks that needed to be completed this month, and I might as well get started. Meeting with Jen was one of them. When I first walked into the office, it felt like it had been a long time. Many faces were gone, some new ones had appeared, and there was someone from Ordinary Suspects. A few people nodded to me as we walked towards the old man's office, which I had never been to before. We walked in and he motioned for us to sit down. I had never spoken to the old man before, and he kept glancing around the office from time to time, but people parted like Moses parting the Red Sea. It was after that that the old man said, "Gentlemen, good morning. This is a private meeting, and what is discussed here is private." The old man started ranting about responsibility and dedication, and he did have some good points. I have to admit, he looked at Paul and asked why they were keeping him. He was doing a great job. He had saved the account and gained many new accounts, and we couldn't find anyone willing to do the job for 20% of the market wage like we were paying him. WTF? And then Paul and the old man started laughing like crazy, like the bar scene in the Pharaoh movie The Old Man. The old man wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes and told Paul that was why he was his best vice president. "I'm well paid, but come on, I feel undervalued." The old man looked at me and leaned in close and said, "Son, I know you're having some problems with your woman. Let me give you some advice," he said, and he quoted someone, and I'm not sure if I got it word for word, but it went something like this. God gave the woman eyebrows, she plucked them out and drew on new ones. God gave her a face and she painted a new one. God gave her breasts and she bought a push-up bra. God gave her a figure, And she wasn't satisfied, buying skin-tight clothes to change her figure. If God can't please her, then how can you please your brother? Don't kill yourself, okay? This took me a little by surprise. I must say the old man looked at Paul and I believe you can handle this. He paused. Your mother would kill me if I had to fire you. So now it kind of blows my mind that they're fucking related. Paul and I walked out and I looked at him and said 20% of men really, and he put his arm around me and said, don't worry, I've got your back. Covered in miso, will I be fired or disciplined? Neither, you idiot, you've been promoted. He said, putting his arm around me and kissing my side of the face. Me, you could have told me earlier, you bastard. Neither, it's more fun this way. I missed you, kid. Now let's go wake it up. It's 8:30 in the morning, Paul. I did all this and you still have a lot to learn. Enjoying life is not surprising to me. This guy really surprised me. What else could I expect from someone who got drunk? He had been drinking sake before and had a fight with a monkey and got his butt kicked. I might add that in the Japanese hot springs we did get drunk and we talked about work and what was going to happen and about Jen. He suggested that I should meet her and get it over with. He said we'd both done stupid things but we were good people. Once I let go, I can move on and stop being held back by emotional entanglements. He once said that once we'd sorted that out we could talk about my career prospects, what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go, so at least I'd still have a job. Dad seems to be doing well. I've been thinking a lot about Jen. I unblocked her on Facebook and browsed her page, preparing for what was about to happen. What was about to happen? I sent a private message asking if she could meet for dinner soon. We exchanged pleasantries and set up dinner a few days later, which will be my next update. I met Jane at a restaurant a few hours after she got off work. Now for the main topic. I fear two things: that my anger will continue and that I will act accordingly, and that my love for her will continue and that I will act accordingly. I hope to find a comfortable middle ground. The moment I saw her walk in the door, all my plans flew out the window. She looked beautiful, smiling as she walked over, and my stomach went into knots. I wasn't this nervous when we lost our virginities together. We awkwardly embraced, and I caught a whiff of her favorite perfume. Was she making a move on me? Or was she playing some kind of emotional game? Did she have another boyfriend? And was she here to show me what I'd been missing? There was no ring on her finger, not even the one I'd given her. We started talking about my father, and she told me that she visited him every time she was on duty, and assured me that the surgeon leading the upcoming bypass operation was one of the best. We chatted about trivial things like her heavy workload during the pandemic and my experiences of the lockdown in Tokyo. I was preparing myself for this, and I can assure you that I appeared calm on the outside, but inside I was falling apart. I told myself that I needed to take hold of these feelings so that I could move on. In the end, it seemed that we were dancing around the elephant in the room, and after a long painful time, she finally looked at me, and her expression changed the whole conversation. I can't remember much after that. I'll do my best to retell it. Jane, first of all, I want to tell you that I'm very sorry about what happened and I'm sorry for you. Are you sorry because you got caught? Or are you sorry because you hurt me? Jane, of course I'm sorry about it, for you, for our life and our future. I threw it away because of my insecurity. Did I do the same? Did you plan it because of your insecurity? Or did you secretly want to punish me and the person I was with when we weren't yet a couple? Jen, maybe it was both. But let me say that before we got engaged, I've never loved any other man in my life as much as I love you. Tim, her ex-boyfriend, cheated on me because he always told me that he could never match my feelings for you. The reason we broke up, I didn't know about any of this, and to be honest, I never felt bad about it. He cheated and I never wanted you to know. I was going to sleep with another man, and I never thought that you would find out. I thought I could emotionally detach myself, and even if you did find out, we could work it out like anything we've been through before. Work it out. But you were wrong. It was probably the most painful thing I have ever experienced. I don't need you to be perfect or experienced. I just need you to be mine, Jen. Each one adds up and cannot express how I feel about you. But now I'm wondering, are these real feelings? Or is this a projection of the dream we as a family have been hoping for? Or is this the fantasy we were hoping for? I'm starting to get emotional. Jen made an excuse to go to the bathroom to compose herself. We were in a medium-sized restaurant with only a few tables occupied. Paul, as some of you have mentioned, sought support by arranging himself in the enclosed restroom. I looked towards him for some encouragement or a thumbs up, but he was having a lively conversation with two rather attractive ladies, who were laughing and making all sorts of gestures. He finally looked over at me, gave me a thumbs up and asked if everything was okay. I nodded to indicate that everything was fine. He smiled and gave and continued with his extracurricular activities. That guy is unbelievable. Jen is back, let's continue. Jen, what did you want to ask about that night? I can't be undone. It's okay, Jen. Nothing happened. I'm not even sure I could do it. When you called to the room I was so scared I rushed to the lobby but you were already gone. I'm fine now. I'm not here to reopen old wounds. I hope we can move on. Jen, can you forgive me? Of course I do. Forgive you. You're not a horrible person, you just made a series of horrible choices that got us to where we are today, and it's not all your fault. I should have been more tolerant and more understanding of your concerns. I'm going through the emotional cycle of love to anger to regret. Part of me wants to yell at her, and another part wants to take her home and forget about everything that's happened over the past few weeks. I've been watching Reddit videos on YouTube to prepare for this conversation, and seeing these people punishing themselves for the actions of the SS, the hurt was worse than the actual infidelity. I was determined not to be so foolish. I started to look at her, and the words of the old man came back to me. The face with the makeup, the fingers with the painted nails and the fitted clothes. If that was what she looked like on the outside, was she the same on the inside? Did they all think the same way? I steeled myself. Jen, what's going to happen to us now? What's going to happen to us in the future? I want you to remember when we were kids and we were walking home from the park and that mean dog came at us. Instinctively, I got in front of you to protect you and saved you. The owner called the dog off and it just took off after a few seconds. But when you were 9, it was really scary. All these years later, I'm still standing in front of you, loving you and protecting you, no matter what. But this time when I gave you everything I had, you stabbed me in the back like a frog or a scorpion. The words hit her like lightning, and she lowered her head and sobbed. I'm not finished yet. I need to get it all out. Jen, I'm sorry. She took out the ring box and slid it across the table to me. Put it there. I don't want this. I was so angry. You thought I wanted to sit here with my heart in my throat while you cried. I wanted to go home and play with our kids. I couldn't think of anything for the next few minutes. She started sobbing and covering her face with her hands. I've said some terrible things in my life, but that was the worst. I apologized and said that was too much. It brought me out of the anger mode. The conversation calmed down, and after we had let off steam, we had a normal conversation about our future lives, because our parents were close and her parents were like a second family to me, and vice versa. We discussed how we could coexist as friends in this area, but reconciliation was not on the table. She got up to leave and we hugged for a long time. I plan to save the rest for tomorrow, it's been a long few days.